8:10. The Labour Party is being too timid about Brexit. So timid, it risks becoming the handmaiden of the Tories. And who says that? Well, Tony Blair, the man who led the party for 13 years and led the country for 10 of those years. And he's with me. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
And the charge against you from some in the Labour Party, including shadow ministers, is that you're spreading fear based on either non-existent or never did exist evidence, economic evidence.
Well, I don't think that's correct, actually. I think if you look at what's happened since the referendum vote, I mean, we know because even the government accepts that economic growth is down. We know that we have got significant staff shortages, for example, in the NHS. We know that the price of goods, basic goods, has gone up. And we also know that we're faced in the course of this negotiation now with a very central dilemma, which is either that we stay in the single market, in which case we get access to the European market but have to abide by its rules, or we pull out of the single market, in which case it's going to be a very challenging position for the economy.
All right, well, let's take a couple of those economic points you made first. The Centre for Economics and Business Research, well respected, as you know, says that Britain will overtake France in 2020, a year earlier than it originally forecast. It's already the world's sixth largest economy. That doesn't sound like an economy that's struggling post-Brexit, does it?
Right, but you can look at the predictions or you can look at the current facts. I mean, the truth is that economic growth is down from what it would have been if Brexit hadn't happened. You've already got
there's not a direct correlation, is there? That's the point. Not even the OBR says almost certainly, but it doesn't say it's certainly. And certainly the Centre for Economics and Business Research does not make that link.
Yeah, but if you've got the government, I mean, the government sets out every year, as you know, in the budget, it sets out its growth.
And it always gets it wrong.
Well, in this case, what it's doing is actually setting out for the next 5 years a pattern of growth which for the first time, I think in decades, is going to be below 2%. So, you can have a debate about how much, but there's little doubt that Brexit is causing economic difficulty. But that's not the only issue here. The central question...
Well, no, it isn't. It's kind of, on that particular point, it isn't the only issue, because what the OBR, you quote the OBR, actually says is the main reason for lowering the forecast is a significant downward revision to potential productivity growth. Well, that has been with us, that productivity problem, since 2008.
Yeah, John,
when your government was in power, when Gordon Brown was in power.
That's absolutely true. The productivity problem has been with us for a very long time.
And that's our problem, not Brexit.
It's not. Well, Brexit is also a problem. I mean, I think one's got to be very clear about this. If you look at what the Governor of the Bank of England has said, if you actually take a consensus of economic, not just economic forecasts as to what will happen, but what actually has happened in 2017, you will see it's had an economic impact. But that's not the only reason for being in favour of what I'm arguing for today, which is the right for people to think again as they see how this negotiation proceeds and as claim and counterclaim fade and you can actually see what's happening. And
that's all it is, isn't it? Is claim and counterclaim. I mean, you say one thing, you talked about nurses, for instance. Well, the Royal College of Nursing accepts that the reason there are fewer nurses now is not because of Brexit, it's because of the introduction of English language tests for EU nurses.
Yes, but they will also say to you that there are European staff that are leaving the NHS. And if you look at what's actually happening across the NHS as a whole, and this is absolutely central to the whole argument, the fact of the matter is that the government is in a situation where it can't concentrate on the NHS at the moment. Brexit is the thing that it has to concentrate.
Oh, you're conflating two different things now. I mean, the thing is, we're not going to be keeping out skilled nurses if we need them after Brexit. Nobody believes that for a second.
But you've got the numbers of people coming from Europe to work in the NHS has already dropped significantly.
And I just told you why. It's because of language as much as anything.
No, but this is also because you've got people leaving. I talked to a nurse the other day who's leaving the NHS from Europe. There are people leaving as a result of Brexit, but more than that, here you have a situation where the NHS is frankly in a terrible situation. The government doesn't have the bandwidth to really concentrate upon it. It's going to be spending again, on the government's own admission, £3 billion over the next 2 years directly on Brexit costs. You've got additional reductions in revenue as a result of the reductions in growth. And we're hiring what is an extra 8,000 civil servants when we've got staff shortages within the NHS.
The reason that we're spending money on, as you put it, on Brexit costs is we're meeting our obligations. This isn't new money. This isn't a Brexit bill. We have agreed that, you suggested in your document that Theresa May has agreed to an EU exit bill, which she admits could cost between 35 billion and 35 million. Well, the financial settlement is not some sort of fine for its leaving. It's based on our existing commitments. We'd have to spend that money anyway.
Absolutely, we would, and although we would, of course, get something back in.
So what you said was misleading.
However, no, because there are two separate things. There is the bill for leaving the European Union. That's been the subject of the negotiation. And then there's the additional sums of money that government has having to spend to prepare for Brexit, including hiring substantial numbers of people. Now, my argument, very simply, and it's an argument addressed as much to the Labour Party as to the government, is Brexit has a massive distractive impact on dealing with the actual challenges of the country. And you can see this so clearly with the National Health Service.
Yes, but we voted for it. We voted for Brexit. There's a small democratic problem here.
Of course. And that's why, as I say in my piece, if the will of the people doesn't change, then we're going to do Brexit. My argument is very simple, that on June the 23rd, 2016, we voted to leave the European Union, but we didn't yet know at that point what the terms of the new relationship would be. Once we know those terms of the new relationship, we are surely entitled to think again. It's as simple as that, and that's a perfectly democratic argument.
Well, is it a perfectly democratic argument? We were offered a very a very clear choice in June of last year, and that was whether we wanted to stay in or get out. We voted to get out. Now, when you talk about one of the options in your piece, when you talk about one of the options being to rethink and stay, how do we rethink it? We have had a referendum.
Yes, but we didn't.
Supported by just about everybody in the House of Commons, incidentally, only a few Scots.
Right, but we didn't at that point, when we had the referendum, know what the alternative is. In the course of 2018, exactly. And so in the course of 2018...
But we didn't say to people, look, bearing in mind that it could be tricky getting out of the European Union, and we may have to come back to you, which way do you want to vote? We said, do you want to vote? Do you want to stay in or do you want to leave? They voted to leave.
Yes, but democracy doesn't just stop on one day. You're perfectly entitled to continue the democratic...
Well, if you don't like the result of the referendum, you have another one.
No, if you take the decision on the 23rd of June 2016, and you take it on the basis you want to leave the European Union, you then have a negotiation, you then have the alternative to our present membership of the European Union. Once that's put before the people are entitled to think again. And indeed, the common sense would be to say if the circumstances change and we then look at this new relationship and decide on reflection that new relationship does not offer us a better way forward for the future of the country, why shouldn't we be entitled to think again?
Well, put before the people. Now, what do you mean? Another referendum?
Well, that's a second-order question in the sense that you could have a general election, for example. But of course, you could have a
general election. We will have another general election at some point along the road. But
yes, but you could have an election on the issue. But you could have a fresh referendum.
A separate general election.
You can. How you decide?
We've done it.
How you think again is another matter. But John,
the central crucial matter.
Yeah. But the central question is this: what the Brexit people are saying is that having taken this decision, there can be no reopening of it, even as we see what the alternative to present membership is. Just let me finish.
Go on.
So what I'm saying is very, very simple. As the debate proceeds, when we then get, as we will at some point in time this year, we see what the actual alternative is, we are perfectly entitled to say, having looked at it, we do not believe that it's a better way forward for the country than what we have now.
The House of Commons was voted in with this House of Commons, a very clear mandate to see through the result of the referendum. We have a result. It is now their job to see it through. That's what democracy is about.
Actually, democracy is about scrutinising what the proposals that the government brings forward.
Who scrutinises?
It's a parliamentary democracy where Parliament is perfectly entitled to scrutinise the proposals that are brought forward.
We know that we're entitled, if we want to withdraw.
If we wish to revoke Article 50, we're perfectly entitled to do so. The fact is, as the debate as the debate progresses, I think what will be exposed in the course of this year, and you can see this in relation to Northern Ireland, is the central dilemma of the negotiation. And of course it can make a difference to the way people look at Brexit.
Yeah, look,
and let me just explain what that dilemma is. If you end up in a situation where you want access back into the European markets whilst being outside of the single market, you will have to agree regulatory alignment. What that actually means is agreeing to European rules, right? In those circumstances,
all of this is part of the negotiation.
Of course, but once that negotiation is concluded, why are you saying that you literally can't discuss then whether the proposal that the government brings forward is good or bad?
What I said was, and what I believe an awful lot of people, including many people in the Labour Party, say, is we have had a vote. Let me quote you what a shadow minister who described your intervention, as he put it, as being utterly unhelpful. Lots of Labour voters voted for Brexit. And this, he read your piece in the New Statesman, this to them sounds like the metropolitan elite ignoring them. Yeah. Isn't that exactly the point? Clever people like you, well-informed people like you are saying, look, we've never liked this thing. We still don't like it. We like it even less now we see the way the negotiations are going and the effect it may or may not be having on us. So actually, let's do it again. That's what you're saying in truth, isn't it?
Okay, first of all, let's just deal with the elite question. There are elites on both sides of this argument. Okay.
So one elite is on the side of the public who voted, the other elites again.
You've got billionaire newspaper proprietors who are on the other side of the argument. The elites are on both sides of the argument. Ordinary people are on both sides of the argument. 17 million people voted to leave, 16 million voted remain.
Precisely.
Those 16 million aren't all elitists.
You make the point with that single fact, don't you? 17.4 million people voted to leave. That
John,
is it.
Nobody is disputing the result of the referendum.
But of course you are.
No, the simple proposition is, as you see, you yourself have just said, this negotiation then takes place. You see the negotiation. If when you see the terms of it, what are we saying? That Parliament can't look at it and say, well, actually, I don't think that's a good deal.
Of course they can.
Right. Well, if they do that,
and that's a shame. So therefore, but then you go on from that, don't you? They look at it. They say that's not a good deal. We don't like that deal very much. We'll keep trying to improve the arrangements that we've made.
Okay,
we will keep trying to do that outside of the European Union.
So hang on. That's a big advance because you're now saying that Parliament can actually.
Well, no, that's already accepted. Oh, come on. You know perfectly well that it is.
But if Parliament,
Theresa May has agreed that Parliament will vote on the deal.
Yes,
that is
supposing
agreed.
Parliament decides to reject the deal, then what happens? And what is the basis upon which it rejects it? Now, I think what will happen during the course of this negotiation is that what I call the central dilemma, i.e. you're either close to Europe, in which case you have to obey the rules, or you're far away from Europe in a kind of Canada-style free trade agreement, in which case you've got a big process of economic restructuring.
That's a somewhat crude comparison, but any alternative.
It's actually more or less what the European negotiators are saying, and if you read the government statements, it's more or less the same. Now, let me just deal with the Labour Party point, because it's a really important point. In my view, the Labour Party doesn't believe the answer to the problems of Leave voters is Brexit. The answer to the problems of Leave voters who are worried about unemployment, who are worried about declining incomes, who are worried about the health service,
all those things, and they think that those problems are more likely to be solved outside Europe than inside Europe. That is what they voted to do last June.
Yeah, but it is not correct that they're going to be better solved outside of Europe.
You're able to say that, but they rejected that argument, Mr. Blair. They rejected that argument.
That they rejected that argument. You look at just what's happening to the health service now.
They don't understand all this then. I think these chaps, these men and women.
I'm not saying that they don't understand it. What I'm saying is that just let me finish it. If as the Labour Party, you went out to the people in constituencies like the one that I represented and said to them, look, we understand what your problems are. Here is the answer to your problems. If we want to deal with the health service, here's the way of dealing with the health service. But what we're going to do if we go down the path of focusing on Brexit is that the whole energy of government is going to be devoted to Brexit, not the National Health Service. We're going to be spending money on Brexit and not on the National Health Service. It is not tendentious. It is actually correct. There is money going to be spent on Brexit that could be spent on the health service.
Well, tell me this.
And the £350 million a week that was supposed to come back to the National Health Service, where's that now?
So tell me this, why did the vast majority, with the exception of 53 MPs, the vast majority of the House of Commons vote for a referendum? Did they not anticipate the possibility that we would turn against Europe? Did they not anticipate what is happening now? Were they too silly to recognise the consequences of what they were doing?
That happened, and we had the referendum.
We did.
I know, but
we did.
I'm making a very simple point.
With the approval of Parliament.
I know. I'm making a very simple point to you. I'm not disputing that we've had the referendum, and I'm not disputing the result. I'm simply saying that the debate doesn't stop at that point, that you are entitled to say, as you see...
All right.
Counterclaim and claim is replaced by fact, and you see the actual terms of the new relationship. It's not undemocratic to say we are entitled to think again.
And just tell me, if you can, in 30 seconds, how do we think, what process should be enacted to enable us to think again? A, you can say yes or no if you like to these things. A second referendum.
Well, whether it's a second referendum or an election or however, as I say, that's a second order problem. But it could
a second
be,
referendum is possible, right?
But it would be a fresh referendum, which this time, as opposed to 2016, would be a choice between two alternatives.
Right. And if we don't like the result of that, might we have a third referendum?
Well, you will in the end decide in that referendum whether the terms that the government have secured are preferable to the existing European membership. And that is not undemocratic.
You risk civil disobedience here, don't you? I mean, this is serious stuff. You really do. If you say to people, we are going to give you a referendum and the choice is in or out, and we will respect. That was the absolute promise made when the government sent out its booklet. Nobody argued with it. We will accept your decision, you, the people. You're now saying, actually, maybe not.
No, I'm not saying that. I accept it. No, I accept entirely the result of the 2016 referendum. I'm simply saying one very, very simple thing, which is that in 2016, you knew you wanted to get out of the European Union, but you didn't yet see the terms of the alternative relationship. If when you see those terms, you think that it is better to stick with Europe, you are entitled to have that say.